episode 366 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Andrew Swafford.
And joining us today, my friend Tomasz Porchal. Tomasz, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Today's
very honored.
It's it's a great honor.
And you actually finished an entire year, worth of. You had 366, right? So
yeah, no, that's the goal now.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Now they have an episode for every day of the year.
Ah, okay. So yeah.
So if you want to do
Please
that,
do not
so you didn't
listen to
miss.
an episode every day of the year.
So people can really stay hooked, right?
That's true. Yeah,
daily dose.
If you're really committed, you can go for a whole year.
All right.
On today's episode, we'll do movies that we saw this week in part 1, and then in part 2, we'll be continuing our Young Critics Watch Old Movies series with 1967's Point Blank. I do want to direct everybody to the site. We got a new review of O Vigilante for the 1992 film by Osoldo Canedias. I don't, unfortunately cannot pronounce that, but
He's a Chilean filmmaker, and he was not something that was on my radar, but apparently he's a big figure in the Chilean New Wave, and we had a writer who really wanted to write about something from the Chilean New Wave, so, go do your homework and read that review.
Definitely. I saw that he shared, actually, if you want to watch it, it's on YouTube in full, so you can watch it there. All right, we're going to kick things off with talking a little bit about the new Leos Cara film, Annette, which stars Adam Driver and Marion Cotillard. It was in theaters. It premiered at Cannes. It was in theaters, but is now...
It opened Cannes, which is hilarious to imagine considering the way this movie opens.
That's true. It opened Cannes, was in theaters for a while, and then it hit streaming. It's on Amazon Prime for people with Prime, but... I know the podcast we're big fans of Holy Motors. We've talked about that one a gazillion times. But Andrew, what did you make of Annette?
It's a hard question to answer because my feelings about Annette evolved a lot over the course of watching it and over the course of the days since watching it. I've felt about every way I feel like you can feel about it in the process. There were definitely long stretches of it where I was very irritated. There were long stretches where I was laughing at it. There was stretches where I was laughing with it. And I feel like the place where I've mostly landed now is that I think it's like really unique and really neat and really fun and really cool. So I guess I should give people an idea of what Annette is even about. It is a musical. The music in the movie, as well as the story for the movie, are both written by the band Sparks, who I know people are massive fans of. I don't really know much about Sparks at all. I need to watch that Edgar Wright documentary about them.
Yeah, I was going to say, they're having a moment right now because they got that Edgar Wright documentary and then they have this musical. So I don't know why we just I don't know. Anyway,
Sparks. Missed the boat on Sparks.
Yeah.
But the story they have written for this concerns these two performers. Adam Driver plays this kind of provocative stand-up comic. He kind of does... crowd work. And what we see in the movie doesn't seem like what an actual stand-up performance would be like. It's more just like this weird performance art thing. And then we have Marion Cotillard, who's a famous opera singer, and they have this celebrity romance. There's all these interstitials in the movie showing like the tabloid news, like E! News or something, reporting on their personal life. And they get married, they have a child, that child's name is Annette. The child, Annette, is played by a puppet in the movie, and that is just a thing that is not commented on, but it is very...
You get used to it.
You get used to it, but it's also impossible to miss. It's not
Yes.
like one of those things like American Sniper where they used a doll, and you're supposed to not notice the doll. You're supposed to notice it's a puppet. Like, impossible to not notice it's a puppet. And I probably shouldn't say any more than that, other than like there are twists and turns along the way. It's kind of like a rise and fall, Star is Born sort of story. but it in very strange and unpredictable ways. There's even some like J horror stuff hidden in like the last half of this movie.
I already mentioned last time I talked about it that, I mean, there is a scene where Adam Driver is going down on Marion Cotillard and is singing at the same time.
Jesse did not want to watch this movie with me.
Multitasking.
Yeah.
Jesse refused to watch this movie with me, but she did want me to bring her into the room when that scene happened because she knew that it was happening ahead of time. And I think she was a little disappointed. It only lasts like...
it's not long.
I don't know. It's like maybe 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And the way that it's framed is a little underwhelming if you've had it sold to you as like this headline, like this eye-grabbing clickbait thing.
It's not like erotic. It's just more like he's singing while he's doing that. I mean, it's just...
But it is, I think, hilarious.
It's hilarious.
And I think that one of my main takeaways from this movie is that it is absolutely not taking itself that seriously. This is not like... I mean, it is like a sophisticated, highbrow, artsy, like cerebral movie, but it's also like very, very silly. One of the reasons why I mentioned that it's funny to imagine that it opened Cannes is that there's like this opening dialogue, this narration that plays before the movie actually starts of like somebody addressing an audience of people, and he tells the audience that like they are not allowed to breathe for the entirety of the show, and if they have to fart, they need to do it in their head. So like that's the kind of level of humor we're dealing with here a lot of the time. And the movie is like constantly reminding you that you're watching a movie. It's constantly reminding you that like musicals are highly artificial things. Like the scene where Adam Driver goes down on Marion Cotillard, he is singing a song called "We Love Each Other So Much," and one of the only lines in "We Love Each Other So Much" is just the line "We love each other so much," repeated over and over and over, done in like the most deadpan fashion imaginable. And it seems to be just like playing on the fact that most songs and musicals only exist to like convey a single idea about like a plot point or a character or something, but they like in this musical they don't embellish the idea at all. They just like say the idea out loud. Like there's another scene where Adam Driver is like traveling around the world, and the line is "We're traveling around the world, we're traveling around the world." Like they just says that, and so what kind of clicked for me about halfway through is comparing it to Holy Motors, which is doing a similar thing with very different execution. So the basic conceit of Holy Motors is like you're watching this actor character played by Denny Levant like getting into and out of all of these roles, and he's playing like these little 5 to 10 minute scenes, and you see him prepare for the scene and you see him get out of the scene, and so you know it's fake, but you can't help but get personally invested in the scene. And it's like almost a flex. It's showing off like what movies can do. You know, the Roger Ebert quote about movies being machines for empathy. Like you can't help but like emotionally connect to characters on screen, even if you know on like every conceivable level that this is just fakery. And I feel like with but it's done like very I don't know, with a great amount of like pizzazz and style in Holy Motors, and this is like so dry, and it seems like Leo Carra, or however you say his name, it's a fake name. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. It's a meme. There's no right way to say his name, I feel like. He's like stretching that idea to its limits, right? There's like this meta intro and outro to the movie that is like, we're not actually watching the movie yet. The first song in the movie is called "It's Time to Start," or "May We Start," I think. Like, can we actually get this movie started now? And then like we're watching a musical, which is already kind of like an heightened artificial mode of storytelling. We're watching a really weird musical where these songs are like so literal and so repetitive, and we're watching these songs being sung by somebody like Adam Driver, who's not really that good of a singer. And you have something like The Puppet in the middle, where like we're drawing attention to the fact that like, you know, when babies in movies were always kind of like doing weird movie magic to like get around them.
Well, and it's also like and like, you know, to your point that it's dry, it's also like abrasively going all of this is fake and you're kind of stupid to get so enveloped in it. Like it's a very abrasive movie, and so I think that's a lot of the reason why people don't respond well to it, because it's kind of giving you the finger the entire time because it's not only commenting on like the actors and like the whole artifice of art itself, but it's also pointing fingers at like you, the audience, for getting so engrossed by it.
And I watched it with Michael O'Malley, who this was kind of his ultimate criticism of the movie, that like he couldn't tell how seriously the movie wanted him to take the story, because you kind of do end up getting emotionally invested in it. And if you think that the movie,
the final scene's great,
the final scene is really moving, and so if you think that the movie hates you for getting emotionally invested, I could see that being a disconnect. But I see Leo Cara like playing with the weird gray area and ambiguity between noticing, like seeing the strings in a movie and still getting emotionally invested in the movie. Like I think it's both.
I think so, and I think he's giving you the finger, but he's also going that he's like, I also like this, but I think he's more so one of the comparisons that people have made toward Adam Driver's character is comparing him to somebody like Bo Burnham or Hannah Gadsby, who is kind of like these people who are commenting on like the world in a way that like people really like, they really get behind it. They really like almost not like in a cult like fashion, but they really do invest in like what these comedians are saying. You look at like the reception to Bo Burnham's Inside, and people really like are invested in like the concepts around that. Like I see it all the time on TikTok that it's something that people have really grasped onto, and I think he's more commenting on that of like, this is artifice, and you are literally like building your whole life around this thing, and it's a fake thing, and it's emotionally investing, but also it's a fake thing. Like it's like what, like I think that's more what he's getting at. I don't think he's like dismissive of the whole thing. It's just, I think he's more dismissive of people who are building their whole lives around pop culture figures, I guess is a way to describe it.
Yeah, I guess that is also a way to understand the little celebrity culture interstitial news clips as well. Like the way in which these people's lives are not necessarily their own, but being viewed by the larger culture in like this obsessive way.
It's one that I was kind of lukewarm. I didn't hate it, but I was lukewarm to it when I saw it. But ever since I've seen it, I have been thinking about it, just because I think I think it's a movie that you have to understand what it's doing, or else. And if you come at it with how you want to view it, or if you come at it with a whole different viewpoint, it's just going to be completely rejected. But if you get on the same level as the movie, you'll enjoy it. And I think that that's difficult for people, and that's probably why it has such a violent reaction to it.
Yes. So there are some really like stunning sequences in it, though, that I think almost anybody would be impressed by. Like the opening sequence, the "It's Time to Start" sequence. It's like a long tracking shot where we're like watching the band playing and watching all the actors come together, and like we're going to the set of the first scene of the movie. And we also see Leo Cara in like the booth, like doing sound for the band. It's really, really neat. There's also another Warner that is it's like a camera that's circling a conductor. The conductor is played by this dude from Big Bang Theory. I don't remember his name.
Oh yeah.
And like he's talking to the camera while he's conducting this orchestra, and the camera movement is like getting faster and slower based on the musical movements of the orchestra, and like it's hard, I think, to explain exactly what it feels like to watch, but it is really like I don't know, thrilling cinematography, and like just a really cool conceit for how to convey what is ultimately just like a character talking about themselves to the camera.
Yeah. Tomasz, you were going to say something?
No, I just you mentioned that it opened Cannes Film Festival. Did you read anything about the particular reactions of the audience? Because
it seemed like it was pretty negative, like almost uniformly negative. from people who like Leo Carra, and for people who were really like on the hype train for the movie on the front end. So I don't really know. I don't know what it's such an odd movie. There's no way to expect this movie, right? So I feel like going in, you are always going to have your expectations like ripped away from you because of what this thing is.
It's a ride because like I was kind of the same way with you. I was hating it at times. I was very much enjoying it at times. I was confused by it at times. It was very much an experience, and I went and saw it. And I was in a theater just by myself. It was cool to see in a theater.
There was nobody
though.
else in there?
No, there was
Zero people?
There's nobody else in there. But it was worth seeing. Like, it was a cool movie.
Pandemic
to see in
or
a
not?
theater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was nobody there.
I think even if we didn't have a pandemic, I can't imagine there being many people in there. But yeah, no, I liked it. But it's very much like it's, as we get to the point where do we recommend it? I don't know if I recommend it to people.
If you want to watch a movie, a new release that is not going to be like the same old experience of like, your normal new release rollout. Like, this does not fit into any like clearly it doesn't slot into any genre category. It's not like any movie you've seen before, except maybe kind of Holy Motors, which isn't like any movie you've seen before. It looks really nice. The performances are weird and ambitious. Adam Driver's really good in it. So like it's an experience.
He likes to extend himself. Yeah,
he's good in it. Yeah.
One fun tidbit: I read an interview with Leo Carra, and they asked him like, "Why did you decide to work with Adam Driver after working with Denis Lavant for essentially all of your other movies?" And he said that what he liked about Adam Driver and what he liked about Denis Lavant were the same thing, which is they both look like monkeys.
That's fair. I mean, yeah.
He's that kind of a guy who is handsome but not really.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Annette, it's on Amazon Prime. If you are interested, it's definitely an experience. And if you have not seen Holy Motors, we've recommended it a gazillion times. Yeah, go watch Holy Motors.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk real briefly about a movie I caught this past week. It's on Criterion Channel now. It's directed by Mikio Narusi, Sound of the Mountain from 1954. And this one, mainly I was interested in it because I'm deeply in love with Setsuko Hara, and Setsuko Hara was in this movie. And I still love her. And I gotta stop watching movies where people are incredibly rude to Setsuko Hara and don't treat her right, because it's just, I gotta stop doing it because I love her so much, and she's never treated right in any movie. But this one, it's about a family in Japan, and you have the Setsuko Hara and her husband, but she lives with her in-laws, the mother and the father, and they seem to have a solid relationship. Like, she stays at home with them. They're older, but the father works. He actually works at whatever, they don't really specify what company or like what his work is, but he works at the same place as the son, and she's kind of doing a lot of the homework. She's not, they've talked about how they've had a maid, but she's doing a lot of the cooking and the cleaning and just kind of taking care of the family, and it becomes clear to the father that his son is clearly having an affair, and so at first you kind of get this whole storyline where his secretary is somebody who he knows has been like hanging out with his son and knows who he's having the affair with, and they have like these really tense scenes where he's like questioning the secretary, and she's like, "Fine, I'll tell you." And then like he ends up like confronting the son, and the son is just like, it's just what it is, like he keeps calling Setsuko Hara's character a child. He's like, "She's just a child," which is such a weird way to describe your wife. And so he's like, "She's just a child," I just define other way, pretty much.
A child I'm married to.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just like, I have to go and find other outlets. And then you also have this other storyline where their daughter also comes home because she also has two kids, and she's kind of pretty much on the outs with her husband, and so you kind of have all of these like marital strife. You have the Satsukahara character and her husband who are kind of, you know, struggling. You have the daughter and her husband who are struggling, and she comes and lives with the family, and she has like this kind of, she clearly feels like she's second fiddle to everybody there. You know, she's second fiddle to the son, she's second fiddle to Satsukahara's character. She just feels very much like the redheaded stepchild of this family. And then you have a lot of the familial stuff that you're familiar with like, because this very much feels like an Ozu movie, just without like the stylistic flourishes of like an Ozu movie. You get a lot of just kind of like how different generations are kind of approaching like this. You know, you have the father is just kind of appalled by a lot of the actions of the son, and he should be. His son is a fucking asshole the entire movie. Like, the entire movie, he's just kind of like, yeah, I'm just cheating on her, whatever. But I think it's also clear, like, you kind of get into those like kind of post World War II shifting generations in Japan, where you have a much more traditional generation with like the father and the mother. You have the generation with the son and the daughter that's a little bit more lax, that they're doing, you know, he goes out and spends a lot of the night drinking, hanging out with different people. The woman he's seeing is like this very metropolitan, independent fashion designer woman who is living, you know, with a friend of hers, and you just kind of have like this generational strife.
It's probably the most radical generational gap you can imagine, you know, in Japan after the Second World War.
It is,
with
yeah.
The opening, yeah.
And the kind of the big wrench that's thrown into it by the end of the movie is you learn that Satsukahara's character is pregnant, and she's, I guess, been kind of talking about having a child for a long time, but without talking to anybody, she learns that she's pregnant and ends up getting an abortion. And pretty much her reasoning for getting an abortion is she just doesn't want to have a kid with this guy. And by the end of the movie, she's pretty much decided that she just kind of wants to divorce him and get out of this entire relationship. But she also has this really deep connection with specifically the father, where he really just is somebody that she can kind of confide in, she can really trust in. And it was really, I'm a giant fan of Ozu. Narusi feels very much like he's on the same narrative wavelength as Ozu. He's kind of investigating investigating these generational strifes in like a very subtle way, similar to Ozu, but he does not have like, you know, you don't get those tatami shots, you don't get like those, the kind of cutaway shots, the pillow shots that Ebert calls them. It's much more traditional in that way, you know, but at the same time, it's investigating like these generational gaps that are prevalent in post-war Japan, that and kind of doing it in a way that Ozu did, where it's much more subtle, it's not as overt, and it's all about kind of the internal, fighting the internal with the external.
But don't you think that, I mean, I haven't seen the film,
mm-hmm.
that the fact that there is abortion, that the daughter has a strong relationship with the father, that she's kind of trying to assert herself, that this was kind of a little, I mean, that wouldn't that make the film stand out, you know?
That's what I would think. It's pretty progressive, like in the way because it handles the abortion very well. I mean, it's not like the when the family learns about it, they don't necessarily condemn her. They pretty much kind of go, well, why didn't she talk to us about it? Like, why didn't she like bring it up? Like, why would she kind of keep that away from us? It's not like it becomes like this. They don't cast her out. She makes her own choice to go, I just don't want to be a part of this relationship. And you kind of have, it's a kind of a frustrating movie, because you have the son who is just, he's very ingrained in like that kind of shifting salary man, Japanese male, kind of that white lifestyle, where he's just very focused on kind of getting his money and, you know, living his life the way he wants to live it. Like he has a very American way of doing things. He's very like, I'm going to do this the way I want to do it. They talk a lot about like the woman who he's seen. He talks a lot about like how he's kind of abusive. Like he'll make her sing even though she doesn't want to sing. Like, and I think a lot of the turmoil is the father kind of going, the father kind of seeing what his son has become, reflecting on like, did I do this? Like, was I like, the catalyst, the responsible for it? And, can I change him? And that's what's kind of frustrating about the movie is he's constantly kind of approaching him about it, but it's clear that he doesn't want to change. Like, he's actively made this choice to be this way. It's an interesting movie. It's on Criterion Channel now. I think if you're a fan of the Ozu, if you're a fan of Ozu movies with Setsuko Hara, whether it's Late Spring or Tokyo Story or things like that, this is also one of her great performances. I think I always like to see non-Ozu Setsuko Hara movies like this, and No Regrets for Our Youth, the Kurosawa film, are kind of interesting. It's interesting to see her in that and in those movies without the Ozu lens, and so I'd recommend this one, Sound of the Mountain. It's on Criterion.
Zach, this is somewhat unrelated, but I guess I've never asked you about this. Have you seen Millennium Actress?
I have not.
What's the title?
Millennium Actress.
It's an anime film by the late great Satoshi Kon, and it's about Setsuko Hara. It's like a lightly fictionalized and greatly stylized biography of Setsuko Hara. You should watch it. You'd love it.
I'm done. Of course I'll watch that.
He's got his evening.
I love her so much. I think Setsuko Hara might be my favorite actress. I love Setsuko Hara so much. She's such a good actress.
Wow.
She's so subtle with everything. It's amazing.
I've got some Japanese actresses. I'll run them by you for comparison.
Okay. Andrew, I'm going to toss it over to you. You've been on this is a completely different field, but it's Muppets.
How different is it really? We had the doll baby, the puppet baby from Annette, and we got Muppets. Recently, Fathom Events did a screening of The Great Muppet Caper, which recently celebrated its 40th anniversary, I think. And I went to see it kind of on a whim, and loved it. It was so fun, so enjoyable. And I have never seen like the classic run of Muppet movies, so I've taken it upon myself to watch all the Muppet movies in order. So I've watched 3 of them, and the chronology of the Muppet film series kind of has a couple arcs to it. There's the first 3, which are like globe-trotting movies. The first one is about a trip to Hollywood. The second one is about a trip to London. The third one's about a trip to New York. And then after that, they kind of move into Muppet adaptations of literary classics. So things I'm looking forward to are The Muppet Christmas Carol and Muppet Treasure Island. They also did Muppet Wizard of Oz. And then there's like Muppets in Space, which is like off doing its own thing. It's not a musical. It's the only one that's not a musical. And then there was the remake or the reboot movies with Jason Segel, The Muppets and Muppets Most Wanted, which I've seen the first of those. But I wanted to talk about the little trilogy of like the globetrotting Muppet movies. The Muppet Movie, Great Muppet Caper, and Muppets Take Manhattan. I wish I could say all of them were good. One of them, unfortunately, was a major disappointment for me. But The Muppet Movie is a lot of fun. It is the movie that Rainbow Connection comes from. The movie basically opens the Rainbow Connection after a very short, also kind of Annette-esque It's Time to Start sequence. And like that is just like a Rainbow Connection is like such a sincere, beautiful, amazing thing in and of itself. But it is also contained within this broader story that is also very sincere and sweet. Though ultimately, like where it ends up landing is it's kind of like a Hollywood myth making thing about like how you can go to Hollywood and anybody can make it here. But like the fun of it is all the songs, which are ridiculous and great and catchy, all the personality of all of the Muppets, and the cameos. There's a lot of celebrity cameos in these movies, which I think is one of the main draws to the series. I have two favorites in the first movie. One of which is Steve Martin playing a very non-classy waiter at a restaurant that Kermit and Piggy go to, but they don't have a frame of reference for what class looks like, so everything that he does they think is like very sophisticated. He like just peels off the foil on the top of a champagne bottle and like wads it up and throws it off of a balcony. And then the best one, oh my gosh, I'm worried that I'm spoiling this for people because it was such a great surprise when I saw it, but I can't not talk about it. When he finally gets to Hollywood and Kermit goes to like a Hollywood movie studio, he's trying to become rich and famous, and he's let into the office of this like bigwig Hollywood guy, and the guy's like, he has his chair turned around, you can't see who he is, and then he eventually turns around, and it's Orson fucking Welles. and Orson Welles' only line is, he calls his secretary and he says, "Draw up the standard rich and famous contract for Mr. Kermit the Frog." Which is just it's so good to hear come out of Orson Welles' mouth. Great Muppet Caper is even funnier than the first Muppet movie. Oh, hold on. Let me back up. There's something I forgot to mention in the first Muppet movie. There's just so many ridiculous things that happen in this movie. One of the ridiculous things that happens is a kaiju version of Animal from the Dr. Teeth band. He takes some sort of serum that makes him grow like 10 times his size, and he scares off some bad guys, which is wonderful. I saw somebody... there's like a podcast recently that like did a Q&A show, and one of the questions was like, what Muppet should fight Godzilla? And the answer is obviously kaiju Animal. Like there's no other answer to that. Anyway,
yeah, we didn't cover that last week in our Godzilla episode, unfortunately.
Right. Animal, we've already done Godzilla versus King Kong. We need Godzilla versus Animal. That's the next one in the whole like Adam Wingard Godzilla verse. Great Muppet Caper, even funnier, and it adds a lot of meta stuff that wasn't in the first movie. Like it opens with the title sequence or the opening credits, and Kermit and Fozzie and Gonzo are in this hot air balloon as the opening credits are like going over the empty space in the sky, and one of them, I think Gonzo or Fozzie, is like, I hope we don't fall out of this hot air balloon. This is really dangerous. It's really high up here. And Kermit's like, well, we're not gonna follow this hot air balloon. It's just the opening credits. You know, there's no way anything bad could happen to us this early in the movie. And it's like that kind of humor throughout the whole film. And it's like, God, it's just so like tightly written and funny, like, and clever in a way that I feel like family movies aren't clever anymore. Like it almost never just kind of going for the lowest common denominator, like just silly, you know, fart joke humor, to use kind of an overused phrase. There's always something like kind of, I don't know, just smart and witty about it, that I feel like is kind of absent from family movies today. And I don't really have... Oh, I do have a couple more things to say about it. One of which is that this movie involves... And I texted Zach this immediately as it was happening in the theater. I couldn't not text during the movie. This movie involves Charles Grodin falling in love with Miss Piggy. It also involves 3 Busby Berkeley style musical numbers using Muppets, one of which is like a $1 Million Mermaid underwater like swim choreography sequence with Miss Piggy swimming through all these human figures, which is like amazing. And like you're in Great Muppet Caper specifically, you're like constantly asking like, how did they do that? There's one scene that people have probably seen in like GIF form of Kermit the Frog riding a bicycle. It's like, where are the strings? Where's the hand? You know, how are they making this happen? In Great Muppet Caper, they do that, and he's riding a bicycle alongside Miss Piggy, and Kermit like gets up on the seat of the bicycle on one foot and is like doing tricks and stuff. And then the song culminates in like dozens of Muppets riding bicycles, like all converging onto the same road. And like all of the like, how did they do that synapses in your brain like just explode into like exponential numbers. So it's just like amazing, incredible, impressive. Like
I was sold that Charles Grodin like
falls in love with Miss Piggy.
Falls in love with because really it's like you said Charles Grodin, and I was like, I'll watch that movie.
Yes, you should. You should absolutely watch it. The third one, Muppets Take Manhattan, not very good in my opinion. Downright bad. Cursed is what I said on Twitter. It's like a gritty New York movie. It's like, on one level, I want to get behind it because it's like a class-conscious Muppet movie. It's about like Kermit and friends going to New York to try to make a Broadway play, and instead of Orson Welles being there to write up the standard Rich and Famous contract for them, they just like hit brick wall after brick wall after brick wall, and they're like poor and hungry and can't afford food, and they have to like split up and not be friends anymore because they all have to go find like awful jobs in various parts of the country. But it's like, it doesn't even really attempt to be funny a lot of the time. It's trying to go for like this really like heavy emotional thing, which doesn't really work for the Muppets, I don't feel like. And when it does try to be funny, a lot of the times the humor
it's way too existential for my Muppets.
It's too existential for the Muppets. Yes, this is too real. I don't want to be thinking about. I was actually watching this the night before payday, and like Jesse and I were like struggling to find something to make for dinner that night because we couldn't afford to go out. So it was too real. And like when it does try to be funny, a lot of the times the humor is like in bad taste, which is not the case in the other Muppet movies that I watched. Like they're always like very timeless and smart the way the jokes work. And in this, like a lot of them had to do with like kind of rapey, like unwanted sexual advances upon various people, and like there's weird stuff with like racial discrimination towards the rat Muppets that like doesn't really land. And do you know, like there's like a dozen little rat Muppets that all look the same and they're tiny. They work in a restaurant, which is supposed to be, it's like a proto Ratatouille joke.
It's the rats and it's the Swedish Chef.
Swedish Chef is not in the restaurant, but in the show that may be the case. I don't know. The way this movie ends is like Kermit and friends getting to actually make the Broadway musical they've been trying to make. And so it's one of those movies that's all about like artists trying to create a work of art, and you get to see the work of art. And most of the time, when movies like this, when this is the narrative, you don't end up seeing the work of art because anything that you could see would probably pale in comparison to what you're imagining how great it's going to be is. There's the exception of something like The Red Shoes, for example, where the art that you see is like the most amazing part of the movie, and it totally lives up to the way that the movie has built it up. And this is the rare case of when they show it and it's awful. Like, I think the movie wants me to watch this and like have my heart fluttering with joy at how beautiful the Muppets like dream is, but it's like if I was watching this musical, I would walk out. This is a really bad musical. It's a really bad way to end this Muppet movie, and it just ends with that musical. Like there's no outside of the text afterwards, and it just left a really bad taste in my mouth. So I'm gonna keep watching them. I've heard that Muppet Christmas Carol was like a lot of people's favorite.
People really like that one.
Christmas Carol movie, and a lot of people's favorite Muppet movie. So really stoked for that. And I'm excited to get to the reboot movies as well, because I remember really liking the Jason Segel one, and I've heard Muppets Most Wanted is even better. But you know, just a quick plug for the Muppets. People should watch the Muppet movies. They're good cinema. You know, a lot of people put a lot of hard work into those, and I feel like for the most part it really pays off.
And unfortunately, they're now under the Disney balloon, so you can find all of those on Disney Plus. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately. All right, we're gonna take a quick break, and then we will be back talking Point Blank and getting shot in a jail after this.
Hello, Cinematary listeners. This is your favorite Filipino podcaster, Jessica Carr. I'm here to let you know about a couple of things that Cinematary offers that you might not know about. First, if you're a fan of what Cinematary is doing, please consider joining us on Patreon. Remember when we weren't clamoring for your dollars? Well, now we're just clamoring for 5 of your dollars. So please help us and donate to our Patreon, and then you'll get exclusive content from our staff, including our Film Theory and Chill series, where a panel takes a piece of theory each month and deconstructs it before diving into whatever topic is on their mind from the past week. The $5 each month is investment in the website and the podcast, and it goes solely to paying our writers for the reviews each week, so please consider doing it. It's only $5. If you missed an episode of Cinematary or a piece of writing we've had, you should consider signing up for our free newsletter. Each Sunday, we send out a note with the latest podcast episode, piece of Patreon content, and the last 2 reviews that we've written at cinematary.com. It's perfect for those of you who are interested in what's happening, and it makes sure that you don't miss a single Cinematary review. Finally, the easiest thing that you can do to help us is to please give us a rating and review on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever else you're using to listen to the show. This helps us get more eyeballs and ears on the podcast and the website, and it helps the people know about Cinematary, which is really what we're here for. So to recap, consider donating to our Patreon, sign up for the free newsletter, and give us a rating or review. We would really appreciate if you could do these things. Thank you for listening, and now back to the show.
Alright, and we're back with part 2 of episode 366 of Cinematary. In this part, we'll be continuing our Young Critics Watch Old Movie series with 1967's Point Blank. Just real quickly, directed by John Borman from a script by Alexander Jacobs and David and Rafe Newhouse. The film stars Lee Marvin, Angie Dickinson, John Vernon, and Keenan Wynn. The synopsis: a ruthless crook, Walker, is betrayed by his partner Mal Reese, who leaves him for dead on Alcatraz Island. Having survived, Walker returns years later to get revenge. He gets his first lead when a mysterious man tells him that Reese is now part of a vast criminal organization and dating Walker's wife's sister, Chris. But after contacting Chris, Walker discovers that in the truth she loathes Reese and is willing to help him get justice. Tomasz, I'm going to start with you because I know this is something that you've taught in your classes, and you pointed out to me that you love this film, and so I'm curious to kind of start with your history with Point Blank, and I guess why it's a movie that you teach to students to kind of teach them about the history of movies.
Well, before we got on air, I mentioned that I used that film because it has some incredibly remarkable illustrations of creative, very innovative editing, of wonderful mise-en-scène, transitions. It's just so brilliantly made, and it's especially impressive since this was put out by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, by a major studio, and it's a miracle of a film, given the time, even though Hollywood was already changing. You know, we're talking about 1967.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, in many ways it's a kind of a pioneer film, but I just couldn't believe when I watched it first time that a film like that was made in Hollywood, that it got released, you know, that it got approved, that it wasn't shelved, you know, or simply you know, kind of kind of like you know, corrupted or mainstreamed. You know?
Well, that was the first thing that I mentioned to you when you came over. Is like the thing that impressed me about the movie the most is like it's just incredible to me over anything. I mean, I liked it a lot, but it's just incredible to me over anything that a major studio put this out, like a Hollywood studio put this movie out, because I couldn't imagine today something as like strange and wild as this movie being put out by a major studio, much less like an independent studio, you know. And so it's incredible to me that MGM put this out.
Yeah, and what you know, because I was curious about the circumstances of its production and release, and you know what kind of helped that film become a reality is that first of all there was there was a Lee Marvin, and the star of the film, who really believed in it, who also had a lot of faith in John Borman, who at the time was just a kind of a you know, really.
Is he a journeyman? Is that an appropriate word to call John Borman?
Yeah, I mean, he was not not just well known. He was just at the beginning of his career.
Yeah.
And he had some film. I forget, like Catch Us If You Can, which was about some rock band, and it was kind of trying to imitate the Beatles documentary, but he didn't have much to his credit, you know, and yet whoever noticed him in England arranged for him to come to Hollywood and make that a film, Point Blank. This was his first American film. It was his first film in color. And to have that trust, and then obviously he clicked with Lee Marvin, and Lee Marvin kind of protected that film, and Lee Marvin also, you know, kind of put his foot down in his kind of dealings, relationship with the studio executive, and so. I should mention one more name. There was this one of the big bosses at Metro Goldwyn Mayer who was responsible for the final approval of the films and especially editing of the films, and her name was Margaret Booth, and during the, what do you call it, like the final,
a nice street sweeper.
Yeah, the street sweeper. Am I am I in trouble with the car on your side?
No, you're good.
Okay, yeah. Wanted to run and repark it. No, but she was there when, you know, they have the final rushes, you know, and they watch the final product together with the studio executive, and their reaction was, you know, they were puzzled. They didn't know what to do with it. They didn't want to kind of put their name on it, you know, and they wanted to make a lot of changes. And she stood up and said that if anybody tampers with that film, even in, you know, she liked it so much, you know, and she was kind of another person that made that film happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I think I just noticed from like doing some cursory research that it was that Lee Marvin was very much like whatever John Borman wants to do. That's what we're gonna do.
He had a lot of free hand.
Yeah, I mean that's what Borman was very, because he's like, this is literally my first American movie, and I'm getting Final Cut. I'm getting all this stuff. He's pretty much getting treatment that a John Ford or a
someone
George
really
Moore or
established
something like that, would be getting on his first American movie. Andrew, I know that you'd seen this relatively recently. I mean, what was your impression of Point Blank?
I should give a caveat that I have not watched this in the last couple days. I watched it about a week and a half ago. I watched it at Central Cinema here in Knoxville because they just happened to be showing it a week and a half before.
I am envious, that you had it on the big screen.
A friend of mine, a friend of the show, Nick Hinker, who was one of the people who owns and runs Central Cinema. This is one of his favorite movies, and they were doing a staff picks series, and so this was his staff pick. So thank you, Nick, for showing this movie. And I went to see it really not knowing anything about it. So I guess I went in similarly to what a lot of audiences in 1967 or studio execs sitting down to watch this movie for the first time felt, because all I knew about it was that people liked it. But based on the synopsis, all I could tell was that it's a crime movie, it's a revenge movie. I was kind of expecting something a little bit more boilerplate, if not particularly well done. But I was shocked. I was so surprised at what this movie ended up being. Right at the beginning, it kind of drops you into this really brutal death scene. Very much in media res. You don't really know who anybody is or what's going on, but there's just so much chaos in the editing and the sound design and stuff like that. And as the movie kind of unfolds over the next 10-15 minutes, you're slowly putting the puzzle pieces together of who these people are, how they relate to each other, and it proceeds to be this weird surrealist dream crime film.
Almost, yeah.
Where
there is an argument to make that it may not, the whole film may have been just, or may be seen as a kind of a flash forward almost, the kind of a fantasy of being carrying out that revenge, getting getting back at for being betrayed and double crossed.
Yeah, so I guess it would be Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge by Ambrose Bierce.
Exactly,
if you know
the Ambrose Bierce story. Yeah, exactly.
I hadn't considered that, but I mean the movie is so strange and living in this strange level of reality that I could totally see that.
Yeah, and there are so many indications, that to support that kind of interpretation. But then there is probably not enough. It's just kind of thrown in to to make our engagement kind of a little more complex,
Yeah, complex engagement I think is a good way to put it, because you're having to engage with the movie on a couple different levels at once a lot of the time. You'll be hearing the audio of one scene while you're looking at the video of another scene, and you're having to separate these things in your head.
Yeah, there is that a lot of that. Yeah, there is that. Well, it's dissonance, because it's the asynchronous sound and image, and just the fragmentation of the narrative, of the continuity. So many gaps in there, that we are asked to fill in, and we may try and succeed, but maybe with an effort or with some reservations.
Well, it's one of those movies that you could sit there, you could take the cinema sins fine-tooth comb to it, but you're just that's so boring to do. It's way more fun to just experience it and just live in whatever the hell world it wants you to live in, because there's just something so hypnotic about all of it.
Hypnotic is a great. I mean, consider the music. Even the music is there is this jazz kind of melancholy score, but then there is also that kind of wistful kind of plaintive vocal part to it that kind of suggests this kind of regret, and the impossibility of that reality we are seeing, or the kind of futility of that revenge,
Yeah, there is something very futile about it, and in Lee Marvin's performance too. Once you get to about the halfway point in the movie, he looks like a dead man. Like he's just walking, like staggering around from scene to scene, woodenly, like no emotion whatsoever, but like in a great way, right? He's not failing as an actor. He is ultimately he is succeeding so well as an actor in those moments. And like you're asking the question, like, not only is this worth it, which is almost always a question in revenge movies, but like, what are you even getting out of this? Like, what do you want right now, man?
Well, I mean, literally the one. What's the?
It's self-reflective.
The one character asked him that. He's like, "What do you like? If you get the money, like, what are you gonna do with it? Like, you clearly have no plan. Like, you're just doing this to do it."
Well, the money is something concrete that he's after, but it's about revenging or avenging the betrayal,
right.
Like the money is secondary because at the end At the end, we have this kind of a circular structure. He's back at Alcatraz. The money is there. He is not coming out of the dark to claim it, He is retreating to where he was when the film started, which supports that interpretation. It may have been a dream. And then in the very, very last scene of the film, and it's really just a kind of an establishing shot, we see the island, of Alcatraz from a distance, as if we kind of moved away and left him there. This is the movie. But to your point that the beginning is stunning because it starts with a shot. It starts with a shot, so it's actually a shot. The opening shot is a shot. It's a gunshot that will be then recurrent. Kind of reminding us that. Of his condition, of what happened to him, but because it's in the dark, we don't see anything, so it's just an auditory shot, so to speak. And then we go into that. What I loved about that, because it's a pre-credit sequence. We have 5, basically in the course of 5 minutes, the film brilliantly tells us all we need to know for our essential backstory. That they got together with that Mal because he was in trouble. He asked him to trust him, that he was his friend, and that we find out what the deal was. We find out what the plan is. Then we see it executed, and then we see his betrayal. And it's all in 5 minutes, but we get to know so much about the character. It's psychologically already rich. We are already invested before the credits even start.
And that could be a full movie in another movie, right?
Yeah, you're right. And if in other people's hands, in some craftsman, not a master like Borman, this could be a TV series, right?
Well, it's so effective. It reminds me. I think a modern example of that would be the opening sequence of the Wachowski sisters' Speed Racer, which also captures this whole world of everything that kind of sets everything up, but in a span of 10 to 15 minutes. This one though, and I think what's so impressive about it is just the way it edits. It's everything. It never feels like you're going back. You're going back and forward, but it never feels like you're going back. Everything is always. You're always moving forward.
You're moving
just
forward
the way
in
that
your understanding of the movie, if nothing else. It's just the way
it is progressive. You're right.
Yeah, what the way it's edited is so it's so in line with the narrative that it's incredible because you're going back and forward in terms of time, but at the same time you're also moving forward in what you need to know and what is happening.
And it's never flashy. It's always meaningful. There is a purpose to it. It's justified. It's not just to show off.
No, it's. I think there are some editing flourishes that you could say are like kind of like trying to show off. Like I think of a lot of the match cuts. Like you have that match cut where Walker gets to Carter and he's like talking to Carter, and then it has like a match cut where Carter kind of like turns around and it goes from him where Walker's found him to him in the office where he's yelling at the other people like in the organization. That
wasn't as effective.
Yeah, but it wasn't like a flashy match cut like in the vein of like Lawrence of Arabia or 2001, but it was so effective because you immediately went from Walker's talking to him here to it moves on to we have to get rid of this guy, and it does it so it cuts out all the fat.
So abrupt.
It cuts out all the fat. It's so lean.
Yeah, very lean.
Yeah.
I was thinking of another match cut which I admired. Was he's he was to pick up the money there, and he obviously took Carter with him, and Carter gets shot, and it's in that drain, there. And he obviously knows that there was no money, just paper. He lets there is the close up of the water. He lets that money flow down that drain, and then it cuts to another water, which turns out to be the swimming pool water, and we have a close up of hands where a Walker. Shares a bullet and a wallet. Bullet that Carter was shot with, and the wallet that he found on Carter. He shares that with his kind of enabler or
the contact,
guide, the contact. But only then we find out that after first we see the water and we're just like very disoriented. And then we find out, first of all, that it's a swimming pool. Then we find out that they are actually, during the conversation, we find out that they're actually at the place, right, where that belongs to Brewster, which is the next guy he's gonna go after. And so it's just and because we cut from water to water, those waters are different, that they are waters, but they have very different connotations.
Another example that kind of speaks to the economy of the film would be the sequence where he's gone back to his partner after getting out of jail, his romantic partner and his partner in crime, and she commits suicide, and he goes in the room and sees her dead on the bed, leaves, closes the door, and then later opens the door again and it's empty. And like time has passed, she's just been, her body has been moved out, but there's no real acknowledgement of that in the scene. You just have to kind of put that together in your head.
Except that later we see him at her gravesite. I mean, later, but you're right. In the moment,
but like in the moment. The movie is so strange. I'm like, did she disappear? Is there magic in this movie? Is this a David Lynch movie? What's going on?
Who took care of the furniture? The furniture is gone.
Yeah.
How much time has passed?
There's a cat in there now. What's the significance of the cat?
When he's waiting for that guy who delivers money monthly, right? Because that's the justification for him, hanging out at that apartment, at that condo. I mean, there is this moment. The apartment is already without furniture, and he just gets kind of feels compelled to open the blinds, and the blinds have a screen door, and through that screen door, he's kind of seen, kind of blurred, comes into focus, and on the other side, through that screen door, he sees no other than. Who turns out to be that Fairfax, that handler of his, that kind of guide. I don't know how to call him. And the guy's just there. And what's remarkable about that guy is that he's nameless, really. I think to Walker, he's nameless, and he just kind of he's tracking him, and
He's always around.
He's always around, and he always has some new instructions or some approval, and he's just kind of guiding him along in his journey of revenge. But he's very often he's alone. They are alone. When they talk to each other, there is, except on the boat, on that ferry, there is nobody else. So that kind of, I mean, I think that Soderbergh in the conversation on the Blu-ray, on the commentary, he suggests that Fairfax, that character, because he appears out of nowhere on that ferry, with the instructions how to start his revenge. He's there on that he compared him to an apparition. It's like that there, that kind of also supports the possible idea that it's all kind of dreamlike.
It's interesting because I read in notes, Soderbergh talking about this movie. It's interesting that Steven Soderbergh is like obsessed with this because
yes.
You can very much feel a lot of his touches just in the way he edits things and he moves scenes, like in the way that this movie operates. I also think that what's interesting about this movie is it kind of is operating on like this kind of teetering level between like the kind of classic film noir, but also a noir that's infused with like new Hollywood, and as you say, like kind of this changing of the guard in terms of like how studio movies are made.
There is I mean, it's in color, right? So it's not noir, but the theme, the character are straight from film noir. There is some play with the shadows and the kind of chiaroscuro and all that.
And Soderbergh compares the Lee Marvin character to like a Humphrey Bogart character.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And and there is also an influence of the French nouvelle vague, the new wave. There is that too, because there is a lot of modernism there, and the colors, and because a lot of scenes are kind of specifically in kind of unified by a certain color tone.
Yeah, there's the moment where he is looking at those binoculars on the street that's like this bold yellow, and the woman who's with him is also wearing a yellow shirt that's exactly the same color. Yeah,
and it's got absolutely. It's like the colors are warming up as we are getting closer to. They get redder. They were just kind of silvery and metallic at the beginning. There's just so much to admire, I mean, after rewatching it, I feel like, I'm retired, but if I were to go back to teaching, I could spend a week, I mean, easily 5 to 10 hours on that, on analyzing it, just kind of appreciating the artistry.
Yeah. Well, I think, kind of going back to the editing, like to me it speaks to like this is like the pure, like almost the pure form of like movie making. Like most movies should incorporate like this type of editing where the editing is informing the story, the character, the mood. Like like we've talked about, all of the editing involved in the film is to propel things forward and evoke some sort of feeling from what the characters are doing, from what the narrative's trying to do. And I feel like a lot of modern directors get very, like they get kind of caught up in like the flashiness of it. They go, we see, like they see the cuts and they see that and they think, I want to do that.
This is my opportunity.
Yeah, like it's more of just like an aesthetic choice. It's like this will look cool. And I think somebody like Steven Soderbergh understands that it's supposed to inform, it's supposed to propel the narrative, the characters, everything forward. It's supposed to all work together. And I think this is kind of as like a reminder, as like a teaching device, it works because it's teaching you that like this is how you're supposed to make a movie. Like it's supposed to, the editing is supposed to be in tandem with everything else.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. No, it's and you have Borman, who then goes to make Deliverance and Excalibur. And,
yeah. Well, and I didn't realize that this movie comes out, and it's and Boorman, they started working on it the same year that Lee Marvin is doing Dirty Dozen.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah.
Which are just kind of two
very different films. Yeah.
Two very starkly different
characters, because they are both action films in a way. But
also
characters. Yeah.
But also like two different movies that are kind of are looking at America in two like vastly different ways. Like there's something about like the character of Walker and just like the I think that you can read a lot into like the uncertainty of like his character and like trying to piece together things in America in like the late 60s. While in Dirty Dozen, like you have like this kind of revisionist World War II fantasy, and he's kind of very much like shepherding that as like the leader of that. I think it's two different. Like it's interesting to him, especially when you also incorporate his character in like Liberty Valance of like these three different male personas in a shifting America.
Yeah. Well, it's I never get tired of this film. I mean, I just realized that after thanks to you for kind of letting me know that you're going to be discussing it, because now I feel like I feel compelled to take a little more time with it and break it down, write something,
Yeah. Well, do you feel do we feel like this movie does get like the recognition and like the study that it kind of deserves? Because I knew of this movie, but I don't think I don't feel like it's one that is consistently brought up as
not. It's
not. People don't have posters of it. Like or maybe I'm just kind of missing it. I don't know.
No, I consider it a classic. Mm-hmm. And it got introduced into the registry, whatever they call it, like the motion pictures, mm-hmm. when it's considered, a masterpiece. Mm-hmm. But just the general public, it didn't go well in theaters.
That's what I would be wondering.
Yeah, and so it's for the aficionados, It's yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I've heard of it through people liking it, but the people that I've heard like it a lot are people who are like several layers deep in their journey of film. It's not something that you go to immediately when you're trying to watch all the big movies.
Yeah, and that's I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at with my question is it seems like one that I feel like should be more canonical than I guess maybe I feel like it is. Like it's not something that I'm seeing on like the AFI lists or like high on AFI list or the Sight and Sound list or things like that. It's I think in terms of just the filmmaking, it should be considered
much
there.
more. You're right.
Yeah,
I agree.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I agree that it's just one of those that's more. People have to understand the parts. You have to understand the parts a little bit more, which, I was having a discussion with somebody recently about this with like Citizen Kane, where Citizen Kane like has this, it kind of has this mysticism to it where it's like this, it's the perfect movie, it's the greatest movie of all time. And I was telling that, and she was going, I don't dislike the movie, but it had so much fanfare, attached to it that like when I finally watched it, I was like, well, I don't think this is the greatest movie of all time. And I'm like, I mean, it's probably not, but at the same time, it's an insanely impressive movie and it's an insanely entertaining movie. Like it's a great movie. Mm-hmm. It just has like that kind of perception attached to it that like you go in expecting the number one thing ever when you watch it. And I think,
I'm kind of. It's what you bring up is actually could apply to Point Blank, because the reason we are, we put Citizen Kane, on such a pedestal, mm-hmm. is that it introduced a lot of kind of cinema techniques.
It's a lot of techniques.
Yeah,
it's a lot of
and all sorts of devices, and it's very very creatively woven into the narrative.
Yeah.
But that could also apply to, I mean, the Point Blank in a different, 20 years later or so, deserves the same kind of. When was Citizen Kane? Was it like
41?
41. You're right. So more than 20 years. But Point Blank is using a lot of, those kind of. Again, techniques, touches, all sorts of cinematic tricks, with the same, in the same, it's kind of in that same creative way, for which it doesn't get the credit. It's innovative, and very radical for its time, and that's what it doesn't, it's not acknowledged.
Though I wonder if the point you were getting at, Zach, is like, because this movie doesn't have that canonical mystical status, we can come to it and be wowed. But when we go to Citizen Kane, there's all this reputation, there's all this baggage attached to it, and you can't see it divorced from that, right?
No, you're right.
Yeah.
This film is definitely, kind of still open for people to get wowed by.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of my overall point is like that's what's really gratifying about like watching this, is that you get to see something that I think is really radical and really technically just incredible to watch. That kind of feels like it's a little bit hidden, like I say, like I'll tell people to watch Citizen Kane because I think it's incredibly fun. It's an incredibly entertaining movie to watch even without the superlatives. But it's gonna be a tough sell for somebody who's really not that invested in movies, because they're gonna be like, well, this is supposed to be the greatest movie of all time. That's what everybody says, and so I think Point
what
Blank,
do you expect?
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
With the greatest. Well, it's just you cannot live up to that.
No, you can't, and it's just it's. So I think that's Point
That's
Blank.
a curse on Citizen Kane.
It is, but I think that Point Blank kind of has the luxury of being, you would like for it to be getting more recognition, but it also has that luxury of not getting the recognition.
Well, I like what Andrew said. It's like this is the kind of the pleasure, the satisfaction of watching that film is that you make your own discovery there.
Which honestly, in like the 60s, 50s and 60s was what people were doing with Citizen Kane, because Citizen Kane was, it had a lot of. Sorry, I got on a whole Citizen Kane. I just read that Eldon gave me that book on Citizen Kane, so I just read about the production of Citizen Kane, and so I'm just like.
Oh, so you finally found the book? He
got me the book, and I'm just like enraptured by like the production of Citizen Kane. But it was really interesting because it really it came out in theaters. It had the whole publicity run because Hearst was trying to kill it. And it was nominated for Oscars, and so all that stuff happens, but then it just kind of goes away and it just disappears because RKO goes down, Orson Welles kind of goes down, it just disappears, and then it gets people find it like in the 50s and 60s. You have this revival of it. People start really appreciating it. Pauline Kael's ripping Orson Welles in The New Yorker. Like it took. It's also a movie that people discovered and really started evangelizing about. It's not like, from day one it was
Absolutely
the best movie of all time, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, and it's obviously with much less critical attention, but this is the kind of the sort of arc that we follow with Point Blank. Yeah.
As we kind of wind down, any final thoughts on Point Blank?
I have two quick things that I liked about the movie that we didn't get a chance to talk about. One is like the way in which the violence is handled. It's really brutal. Shockingly brutal.
It's surprisingly convincing, you know.
Yes. The scene that stands out to me the most when I'm thinking back on the violence in the movie is the used car scene, where he gets in the car with the car salesman and just drives him under a bridge and just like bashes the car against a column over and over and over again. And then the guy gets out of the car and he keeps beating him up.
And then he cannot close the door. There is a little comic relief.
Oh,
he
yes. The door doesn't close all the way anymore.
By the way, I'm gonna quickly interject. So Marvin was the driver. There are no stuntmen here. They really banged up that car. What's amazing is that they repaired that car, put it back together.
Oh my gosh. Ow.
I don't know how and why.
The other thing that I like about it is how that once you get to like the third act, it kind of becomes this weird Kafka-esque story about like corporate culture and how like there's the buck doesn't stop anywhere. Like you can't find a guy who can do the thing that you need him to do because there's always somebody higher up. It reminded me of like
nobody has the authority
to
pay him the money.
There's no money anywhere. Don't ask for your payment because you're not going to get it. I've seen people on Letterboxd say that I think it was maybe Nadine who said this. It's like trying to get paid as a freelancer. Like, I just want my money. Give me my money. And like what it reminded me of is like I just went through this like 2-month-long saga of trying to get my internet service provider to fix my internet, and it was just like constant calling of customer service and like constant like I need another mechanic to come to my house, another mechanic, I need to like jump through this hoop and that hoop and buy this thing and that thing. And I felt like this guy in Point Break. I'm just ready to kill somebody. Like, just somebody tell me the person I need to kill to make my internet work. I will do it.
Andrew's in a car under a bridge with the Xfinity guy.
Yeah.
It's just like we can all relate to it. It's like we are ready to explode.
Well, that's what's so funny about that scene when he's like at Brewster's house, because Brewster's just going like I don't have the money. Fairfax is not going to give you the money. Like nobody, like I don't know why you want this money. He's just like, so I'm going to need you to pay me the money. He's like, I don't have the money. And he's just like, yeah, but I'm gonna need you to give me the money.
He eventually shoots, I think, the phone.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Because he keeps like explaining to him like relatively logically, like this is why we can't give you the money. And Lee Marvin just continues to go like, I just want the money. Like he's like, well, can we give you this? He's like, no, I just want the money. Like that's.
Oh man. Yeah.
Well, you know, if you've been convinced after this conversation to watch Point Blank, it's actually on HBO Max at the moment. So
also, I can throw in that if you have $15, invest it in a Blu-ray edition from 2014, because you have an entire commentary going through the whole film between Soderbergh, and it's just so sweet. And John Borman, who already then was in his early 80s, he's almost 90 now, and he's so lucid, you know. It's just
well, and Soderbergh's the best to listen to talk about movies. Like the dude's so smart.
So that commentary is worth the Blu-ray.
Nice cover too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
All right, well, that will wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at @Cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where you post all the movies that we talked about in this episode. Thank you to our patrons over at patreon.com/Cinematary. Thank you to Cam, Chad Newsom, Christina Daughtry, Corey Willingham, Harry Eskin, Candace Sisson, Ron Hayes, Tyler Chandler, and Whitney Rio Ross. Thank you so much for your patronage. Next week, we will be continuing Young Critics Watch Old Movies with 1969's The Color of Pomegranates, because the 60s are getting weird over here on Cinematary. So, and we talked about it a couple weeks ago, but Andrew and I will be at TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival, in the coming weeks. So be looking for stuff on the Twitter account and stuff and other social media accounts of us reporting from Toronto. It's going to be fun.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. Now you got me hooked.
That's the goal.
That's the goal. That was the reason.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next week.